tourism in the Charleston area has been hit hard by the COVID-19 situation. I talk one-on-one with Helen Hill, the president and CEO of the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
Helen Hill, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It is my pleasure to be with you, handsome one.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Obviously, you are the president and CEO of the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. And as I was on my way down here, I was thinking, who is Helen Hill these days in the midst of this coronavirus outbreak?
I know. Well, I tell you, it's obviously been a very challenging time for tourism. And I've been doing this, Quintin, for probably as long as you've been alive.
Right.
But it is having my 34th year. And we've never been through anything like this. We've done some serious crises in the past, but the virus has presented some unique challenges to tourism that we've never had before. And, you know, the sad part is it's really everywhere. It's tourism around the world, not just in our state or our country. So the most important thing that we're doing, obviously, is focusing on the health and well-being of every single person that visits us, as well as the residents and people who work in the industry. So one of the good things about it is put a great spotlight on what hotels and restaurants already do for cleanliness. Because I think every once in a while people would think that a hotel, people are cleaning it like you clean your home. And they don't know that it's much closer to the cleanliness that we have in a hospital than it is your own home. So that's probably been one of the good things, is just assuring people that we are going to take really good care of them and keep them safe. And like you had your mask walking to I'm sure you did, making sure that you wear a mask and wash your hands and keep a little bit of distance between. So that's where we're headed.
Let me ask you a simplistic question, Helen. Is it safe to travel to Charleston?
It is safe to travel to Charleston if you follow all the protocols, because we really do want people to know that wearing a mask matters. We've done a whole, with MUSC, we did a whole great, PSA campaign, just encouraging people to wear a mask. And really it's just keeping you safe for me, right? It's that if I happen to have COVID. So that's the most important thing, and that we know that the hotels are doing a good job and the restaurants are doing a good job in terms of the cleanliness part. So it is safe to travel to Charleston, and we hope that people will actually do that, particularly as the cases go down. We see a direct correlation between the number of cases when the COVID was going up. Our reservations went down. And so we know how important it is for us to contain this virus until there's a vaccine.
And let me ask you this. How much is our tourism industry down this year?
Between 60 and 75%.
Wow.
And so that's really scary, isn't it? I mean, if you think about our occupancy rates, right. August, fortunately we're in September, but August is not, as you know, not always the nicest time to visit Charleston. It's a little bit hot. We do very well in the beach communities, right? The beach communities are doing very well, but August has always been a challenging month. But we were occupancy-wise for our area, we were about at 44%, which is the lowest it's ever been in my career. And so normally it would be like 65%.
That's right. Exactly right. And what percentage of international travel has been impacted?
100%. Yeah. We've got no international travel at all. Because of there's probably some international travelers, but because we obviously don't currently have any flights, our British Airways flight is not flying. It's, no international travels at all. And for example, those cities that are specific, big international cities, they went from 20 or 30% to zero. So no travel internationally.
And how many businesses have closed in Charleston since the coronavirus outbreak?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the number of businesses closed. I know which one of the hotels and restaurants that have been affected, but I don't have a specific number. Our biggest challenge has been how we're going to hold on to helping people get through at this, particularly the restaurants at this lower percentage. I think we have some real heroes out there in terms of the restaurants that chose to keep their employees and make takeout. I mean, I guarantee they're not making a lot of money, but they are keeping their staff. And right now, the most important thing we can do is hold on to our workforce. We're responsible for about 40,000 people working in this community, and we want to do everything we can to hold on to them. And that's one of the reasons when it is safe to do so, we got to get our visitors back.
And I know walking around downtown Charleston a lot, and even in the surrounding areas, I've seen a lot of businesses open. Do you know how many of those are open right now?
I don't have a number like that. No, I don't. From our businesses, for the tourism-related businesses, we're almost back to 100% open. So we've been down as low, very, very low, and slowly built back up. For example, today, Planters Inn, one of our historic inns, is reopening today. So we've got, we're slowly getting all of our properties back open. And we had so many that didn't close at all, which was great, because we had some that were able to stay open, and that's all good.
Yes. This might be another tough question, Helen, but how many tourism-related businesses have applied for funding?
See, I wouldn't have any way to know that information. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. This might be a complicated question, and I'm not sure this is even implemented, but could the occupancy tax be used for a recovery fund for businesses?
Well, fortunately, the parameters around occupancy, that, if you think about, we have two kinds of fees. One is accommodations fees. That goes, it's what you pay to stay in the hotel. And it's interesting, for Charleston, we have a 2% city tax, we have a 2% county tax, and we have a 2% state tax. So there's three different pots of money that goes to those various groups. And each one of those have a different governing power in terms of how you can use those funds. And then there's also a hospitality fee, so that's on food. So hospitality is on prepared food or alcohol, and that's a really big fund too, that is governed by whatever government collects it. So, for example, the city of Charleston has a hospitality fee that they collect, and then council decides how to spend that money based on their governance model.
And throughout this coronavirus outbreak, Helen, how many minority-owned businesses have been affected?
I think everyone has been affected. Every single business has been affected. And I would guess exactly the same as every other business. It's just sad, Quintin. I mean, the whole thing has been so hard on our whole industry. And for example, particularly our tour companies, you and I had the blessing of knowing a lot of great tour guides in our life, and they have a smaller group that they can take now on the street, and we just got to get visitors back to be able to help all of our businesses, especially our Black-owned businesses.
And I want to expand on that later on in the interview, but let me ask you this. What comprehensive plan will you look at to help reopening some of those tourism-related businesses? Well,
right now, as you might expect, we have some really good advertising and marketing plans in place.
Okay.
But we are not jumping on that full force until COVID goes down. So we've continued our footprint nationally in terms of advertising nationally, to, the more image building kind of advertising. But we are sadly waiting patiently for COVID to start heading down, because it would be irresponsible for us to do a lot of direct advertising when COVID is on the upswing in our community.
What part of your plan is flexible right now?
All of it. Well, it's based on, we've got some, what we call it, like in the can, we've got some really great TV advertising, some great print advertising that we're going to do in the drive market. And one of the things that's changed for us so much is, if you look at what makes Charleston, where people were coming from, before the pandemic, just take a guess on what the number one visitation state was. Take a guess. It was New York. And so you can imagine it is not New York now. Right. So what has changed is we've really focused, what we'll be focused on this campaign is really on what we call the drive market. So if you took, if you pinpointed Charleston and drew a semicircle, it used to be the drive market was about 4 hours. Now the drive market is more considered up to 8 hours. And I am one of those girls. You could not get me in the car for longer than 4 hours. But now, oh Lord, please let somebody put me in the car and let me take me on a trip, right?
Sure.
So the drive market has expanded. So our goal will be, this campaign that we're launching would be to invite those people in the drive market to visit us. And you know, the great thing is with Charleston, if we're fortunate, COVID cases going down, it is a beautiful time. You and I both know it's a beautiful time to visit Charleston in the fall. It's a great time for the beaches. It's a great time for the city. So our whole community just thrives in the fall. And we're really excited about it. We just got to keep people wearing those masks and social distancing and taking good care of themselves.
Yes, ma'am. And I know this might be a redundant question, but how are you planning for a marketing recovery?
Well, that's it. That's what we're doing. Is we've got the great advertising plan on that. We've got a public relations plan. We've got a media relations plan. And a really robust sales plan. A lot of people are doing their buying through travel advisors now, you know, what used to be called a travel agent. And so we've got a great relationship with those folks. And, you know, everybody's like sitting, waiting on go for COVID to go down.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And how supportive are the tourism-related businesses as far as the mayor in office right now? Well,
we've had unbelievable support from all of our 10 governments for the Explore Charleston crowd. Because remember, we represent everyone from Kiowa to Isle of Palms. And so we're very fortunate that each government depends on the tourism industry, not only for employing residents, but more importantly, to bringing in revenue to this. So we've had a lot of support from our governments. And each government has been so greatly affected. I mean, our budget this year is down 40%. And, you know, I've left, so we have a three-legged stool. You know, we get money from private sources, about a third, but then we have about a third from local sources and about a third from the state revenue. So all of our sources of revenue have always been built on our success. So the better we did, right? It was built on the success. So that's a great model when times are good, but more challenging when times are rough, because the cities and the municipalities are not going to collect the accommodations tax they've had in the past or the hospitality tax they've had in the past because we don't have any visitors.
Right. Exactly. And how are you adjusting to the budget to ensure losses are accounted for and to plan for when travelers obviously will come back?
Yeah. So our goal has been to just preserve every dollar that we have for marketing and advertising, because we know that that's what will make the difference. And we've been very fortunate that although we had to lose some staff members, like many businesses did. We were able to certainly hold on to the core staff here, and we're ready to go, man. We're ready.
Let me turn to a little bit of controversy. I'm pretty sure you've seen the New York Times article recently, and they basically and you actually wrote wrote to someone that they are sweeping and not weeping, meaning obviously acknowledging the pain that had spurred the protesters in Charleston. And in an email, I believe you said, quote, "Please remind your staff who handles social media to post only uplifting and positive content. Remember, our audience is bigger than local." Who is your audience right now when it comes to tourism, Helen?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that that's one of those things in terms of having really good listening to some of our Black-owned businesses. You know, that was one of the comments that, you know, we were thinking about it as if you were talking about something, to remember that the audience was a national audience. And our footprint, specifically, they were referring to Instagram, was to paint the picture of how does Charleston look day in and day out. And I think that where the negative comments were coming from is that they were some of the people that were our detractors were looking for us to use that platform to talk about Black Lives Matter for our community. And you well know Black Lives Matter always in Charleston, South Carolina, because you can't separate our Black history from any of the history of Charleston. And one of the interesting things for us as an organization has been, you know, we've been so involved with this conversation really since the massacre at Mother Emanuel. We've been so involved in the conversation that I think that having our words be more sensitive to the current situation matters. And we've had some really good input from our Black-owned businesses to get that right. And we're going to keep doing better every day.
What is that conversation in the midst of the Black Lives Matter era, as well as obviously the political era too?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we can't wait for is you've seen our Voices website, that we did launch 2 years ago. That's been really leading up, everything leading to the opening of the African American Museum, because that's going to be the hub of telling the story, right, of the rich Charleston story. But what's interesting about the new visitor center is one of the pieces of history that a lot of us don't know as much about is the rich civil rights history we have in Charleston. And at the visitor center, we actually have, and I can't wait for you to try it out, we actually have a virtual reality exhibit that will actually take you back to Briggs versus Elliott. And many people don't know that if it wasn't for Wade's Waring, we wouldn't have had Brown versus the Board of Education. That so much of that history is a story that has not been told yet. And we think that it's going to be very interesting to our visitors in the future, because it's a space that has not been talked about a lot. But this virtual reality exhibit is going to be really fun, because people will be able to step back into that courtroom and to see what that was like and what that discussion was like. And to think that that was Charleston, South Carolina is really amazing.
And I'm looking literally at the courthouse as we speak right now.
Well, and, obviously walking by, I had heard about Wade's Waring, but I didn't until Senator Hollings really talked about him and talked about what it meant to the history of the United States. I walked by that man's house all the time, right on Meeting Street, and I did not know the richness of what that brings. So all of that gives us an opportunity, because in visitor promotion, telling a story that hasn't been told is the key to success. And we just have such a rich history that we have not explored or we haven't talked about. So it gives us an opportunity to not only lift up Black-owned businesses specifically, but more importantly, to tell that richer story about what Charleston's all about. So that's where we're headed.
Now, you talk about the new International African American Museum, which is a couple of miles from there. Let me ask you this, Helen. How will you ensure that there will be local minority businesses inside the museum or nearby the museum?
Well, I can't promise anything at the museum, but I can promise things at the visitor center.
Okay.
And one of our goals when we renovated our beautiful visitor center was that we wanted our visitor center to actually lift up our Black-owned businesses. And maybe they're Black-owned businesses that don't know they could be in the tourism business, right? Maybe if they haven't thought about the visitor market. And how can we lift them up at the same time leading up to the opening of the museum? So that's one of the things that we've been working on.
And obviously, there's been a lot of controversy over the removal of the John C. Calhoun statue at Marion Square. Will this affect tourism in your mind?
I think that everything that we do that kind of falls in the category of doing right, doing the next right thing is a good thing. So I know that that monument specifically had so much controversy around it. But if you think about, I always tell people to think about why it was put up to start with. It wasn't put up when John C. Calhoun was alive, right? It wasn't. It was very specific in what it was put up for, and it was all bad, Quinn. It was all bad, right? It was not. It wasn't something. Like some of the memorials would probably have a good reason for. Maybe it was put up to someone whose children died or something, but that one was bad from the start, right? So I'm so thankful that it's gone, and I'm thankful that we can not have to talk about that, and we can move on to something that's much more positive for our community.
And you talk a lot about the Black-owned businesses here in Charleston. Any change in dollars that will go towards Black businesses since the website has been launched for African American businesses?
Well, we've got the Voices website is really specifically more about history and about lifting up voices, but the Black-owned businesses will be all part of our regular membership, lifting those folks up in a way that perhaps we haven't before. Because, we've never segmented people by color, right? We've never done that before. We've only segmented our business like you were a hotel, you were a restaurant, you were a tour, your attraction. But right now in the United States, there's a real opportunity from a media perspective to lift up a segment of businesses. So that's what we've been doing. We got a great story in the Town and Country magazine not too long ago. But, again, we have to react to what's happening in the world nationally. And because right now we have the opportunity to lift up these folks, right? And get them some great press. So that's our plan.
How do you react right now, Helen?
What, pardon me?
How do you react right now?
We just do it. We start. And that's where we've had we've been really fortunate to have some really long-term, great members that have given us some good advice and counsel. And, it's just an opportunity that we can't miss. The whole world's talking about this. We got to be part of the conversation.
And I know on your CVB website, it basically says history loves company.
We do.
I have to ask you a really, really hard question.
Please ask me a hard question.
How would a CVB essentially end whitewashing history in your marketing?
Yeah. Well, we absolutely do not believe that we whitewash history. And one of the things that's what's funny about some of the criticism that we've gotten is that, we've worked so hard to tell the complete story as we know it today. And it's interesting that some of the folks that have been our detractors have only judged us on one platform, on the Instagram platform, versus looking at all of our press and all of our media. And, we very much think that back to your difficult question, I think telling the hard truth is what is interesting to people, right? I think the authentic story that we have told and we will continue to tell is what makes it interesting to visitors in the future, especially as we lead up to the opening of the African American Museum. We got to get that right. We got to tell that story. And what's interesting is that it doesn't change the top line. It just enriches it, right? It makes it bigger and more interesting. Because that's why people travel, is they want to know something they don't know. And probably part of the reason we spent so much time on the civil rights part of it. Again, a story that hadn't been told. I didn't know a lot about it, right? I knew about the hospital strike, right? I knew about some of the big rocks. I knew about the lunch counter. But some of these smaller things I didn't know about. And so, I've been here all my life. It was the story I didn't know. Imagine how interesting that is to a visitor.
Now, let me ask you this too, Helen. I got to go back to the John C. Calhoun statue again. Obviously, since that removal, how can you actually tell the story of John C. Calhoun, obviously, without his statue being there?
Well, it's not, we don't get a lot of questions about statues to be, that's not one of the things that visitors really come and talk about a lot. I think that having back to the reason we were so excited about the Voices website is I think having first person commentary and having people write about that is a real relationship, a one-to-one relationship that the writer can have with the visitor. And one of the things we've just added because of some great input of one of our Black-owned businesses is we've connected that Voices website to itinerary planning so that when you make the decision to come and stay in Charleston, you will know what you can do and how to move based on the new information that you have. And that's the part that's going to be fun for us because it's just going to get better.
Better, exactly right. And
we have more people. We need more people, and you can help us with this too. We need more people that perhaps might not think of themselves in the tourism market. Like one of our great members is a hot sauce, and she didn't necessarily think of herself as being a visitor-related business because she'd always sold her hot sauce at the airport, but she hadn't plugged in another way. Well, what a great opportunity. She's not in the tourist business, but she can sell to visitors. So those are the kind of folks that we hope will be engaged with us as we move forward, because although they might not think of themselves as a tourist business because they're not a tour attraction or restaurant or a hotel, they can benefit from tourism. That makes sense.
How close are you to closing that gap?
Well, we just hopefully we'll have a lot of people lifted up when we open the new visitor center next month. So that'll be a start. Yeah.
Next month. So exactly what will greet us when we go into the relatively new Charleston Visitor Center?
Well, the exciting part, Quintin, is going to be that we've changed the orientation of the building in terms of it was always, it was a side street orientation versus a meeting street orientation. And the wisdom of the architect, Glenn Keys, is just that it now is a meeting street orientation, which is the main street. So you're going to have the opportunity to really walk through Charleston's history in a way that you haven't had the opportunity before. And then we'll have that retail component that really we hope to lift up businesses, not just to sell things there, but really to encourage people, like, if you like this one item, walk down King Street and you will have the opportunity to see more of this business. So that's kind of where we're headed. But I can't tell you how excited we are about the opportunity to look a lot more like the Apple Store and less like, like behind a counter taking orders, right?
Right.
But we sell a lot of tour tickets there. A lot of people make their decisions in terms of what they're going to do in Charleston there. And so we hope that that's going to work. Back to no COVID, Gwen. No COVID.
Yes, exactly right.
No COVID.
Now, absolutely. Now, how will you allocate advertising dollars towards highlighting more Black-owned businesses in Charleston?
Well, all of our advertising dollars, it's a big, that's where all of our money goes, to advertising and promotion. And one of the things that we've always looked at, we call them the silos. Like, if you're interested in history and culture, it doesn't matter what color you are, right? If you're interested in history and culture, you may choose to come to Charleston. If you're interested in great food, right, it doesn't matter what color you are, you're interested in great food, right? So one of the things that we're now doing, because of the African American Museum coming, is we are also going to segment specifically to Black-related media. So we're just starting that process, and we're pretty excited about it because we've never segmented that way before. Okay. And it'll be fun for us because we never had a reason to do it. Now we have something specific to lift up, right? And the key to this for us is generating a whole new audience we didn't have before. And, one of the things we've been working on the workforce front is really focusing on the workforce front. We were really honored this last week to get an award from the VA hospital for getting a lot of folks a job. And, back to the end of the day, what really matters with tourism's success is that somebody gets to go to work in the morning.
Let me turn to my good friend, Elliot Summey. Obviously, he is the new president and CEO of the Charleston County Aviation Authority, the Charleston International Airport. What have the numbers look like in your mind when it comes to him as far as leadership?
Well, we've got, I know that there are a lot of people that are sad that he is leaving elected office, but at the airport, there's a big challenge we have there. I mean, we're down, about 70% in terms of air traffic. And one of the things that's fundamentally changed this community is the success that we've had with air service, because we've had really great air service. And obviously air service is challenged around the country. So the key is going to be having Elliot's great leadership to build that air service back, because it matters for economic development. It matters for you and me in terms of being able to go somewhere. But the reality is our airport was always about 65% of visitors coming in. It was generated outside of our community. So we as residents got the benefit of all those great direct services. So it's going to be a fight, Quintin. It's going to be a rough fight, right? And it's not going to happen quick. Air service is very challenged, and I have a feeling it's a long recovery. The analysts are saying as much as 24 months. I hope it doesn't take us that long. But, we're seeing so much fewer people. And part of it's people being nervous about flying as it relates to COVID. And that, it makes perfect sense, right? But that's our challenge going forward. And it's probably a good thing that Elliot doesn't have to do county council too, because he's going to have a big job at the airport.
Sure, indeed. Let me go back to that process. Why do you think Mr. Summey was the best choice to be the CEO of the Aviation Authority after a nationwide search?
Well, he was by far the best choice for the Aviation Authority. He has, with his background in government and his background as a developer, he was the right person at the right time. We're really thankful to have him. And I think that I know that we naively thought that the challenge with having someone like him run it was the fact that he was also an elected official. And as you know, Paul Campbell is an elected official. So we naively thought that when he agreed not to run for re-election, that there wouldn't be a problem. Nobody would have a problem with it. So clearly, there were some people, he probably, because of his background, there's always going to be detractors. So our hope is that his success will speak for itself as he moves forward. And we really appreciate the fact that he was willing to serve as the CEO of the airport and give up his elected office.
And how will he have time and the energy to do all of this? County council, his businesses, and the airport.
Well, he's not doing county council anymore. He's finished. He's wrapping that up. You know, he just chose not to run for re-election. Right. So he finishes in November?
December,
November, December. And he obviously put aside his personal businesses because this is a regular full-time gig. So we're really excited about what he brings to the table and already having a good time with him in leadership.
Right. Tell me about that process for selecting the new airport manager. What's that typical process?
Well, there's so many different ways to go about hiring any position. And one of the first things that we did is we looked in our family and said, who's the best person for the job? And that's how we came up with him. And, that again, with him being willing to not run for his elected seat, we were so appreciative that he was willing to serve this community during this time of need. And that was before COVID. That was before we knew how bad it was going to be. Now we're particularly thankful to have him.
Now, how open and transparent was this particular process, Helen?
Well, all of our airport meetings are completely open and transparent. The process itself was quick. And so sometimes you get judged if something is quick and you pick within the family. Some people don't like it, but we also knew that it would also be disingenuous if we knew who we wanted to go through a process and drag other people through it just for show when you knew you already had the best candidate.
Now, were there any other candidates interviewed?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
And was a search firm engaged throughout this process?
No, we did not engage a search firm.
Okay. And were there any other candidates considered or assessed?
We asked Elliot to serve in the role when we found out Paul was leaving.
Okay.
The best person that we could find at the time.
And, okay, well, all of this, is this fair to the taxpayers and the airport ratepayers in your mind?
Well, the good news is, and you may not know this, the very good news is that airport only lives on money that the airport generates. So it doesn't use any tax revenue at all, which is another reason, Quintin, we have to work really hard to make the airport successful. One of the challenges that we have right now is that with the fewer travelers going through, obviously you're deriving less revenue. And if you're not using parking, you're not having a great meal in the restaurant, or all of those pieces. So that's one of the really, really biggest challenges. But the airport is an authority, so that's just it's a form of organization. And we really were excited about the opportunity to have a good leader who understood government and also understood development, because that's where we're going for the future. We're going to have to grow. And the airport is an important economic engine for our community. And the part that is always important for tourism, because we want more visitors to be able to fly into our community. But the bigger issue is the fact that there's a lot of commerce that happens that depends on that beautiful airport for their work. And the part that's interesting is we were working on, right before COVID, we were working on some new direct fly cities that, I desperately want California service. We really, we had, the great thing with Alaska, we had the first transcontinental service with going to Seattle. But it's so sad. It's so sad that with everything that's happened to it, it's kind of put us behind the 8 ball. But, there's so many businesses that have direct California ties, particularly in the high-tech world,
right,
that we are looking for those connections, right? And interestingly, so Seattle makes sense because of Boeing, right? There's a lot of people probably flying back and forth for Boeing business.
Right.
But some of the California business, like if you think about San Francisco or Los Angeles, it's hard to figure out who those companies are, because they're smaller companies. They're not a big company like Boeing. Right. So Boeing, we can call and say, how many people are you flying back and forth to Seattle? But some of these smaller companies, it's harder for us to see that, because maybe it's a 10-person office or a 15-person office, or maybe it's someone like yourself who just does business in both cities. So that's what we have to look for in the future, mining the data of our own community so that we can find those direct routes that will be successful. Because we've had a lot of success at places like Denver. You think about what we did to Boston.
Right.
So really good for us.
Exactly right. Now, what do you look for when you look for in the future as far as more minority-owned businesses at the airport?
Well, the great thing the airport has done is really lifted up minority-owned businesses, and that's one. We're also encouraged to do that through the FAA. You may have seen the announcement of the lady that's going to be our new purveyor for Cinnabon. We're so excited, and I hope the COVID doesn't put that behind. But what a wonderful person to be in our midst. But back to using the things that are successful to lift up our local businesses, the airport's a good place to do that. And one of the opportunities that we have is looking at the programs that are available through the FAA and through those companies like her. I mean, I would love for her to move her whole company here from Atlanta, but we have some opportunities there, and it is the place to do it. And we've had a lot of interest. And Charleston is the right place for that, Quinn. It's the right place for it. It's we need to be a leader there at the airport for that.
And now I know, obviously, you said that this airport authority doesn't, obviously, for lack of a better word, doesn't use taxpayers' money. How much money is the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau getting money from the Aviation Authority?
We don't get. I wish we got money from them. No, we get no money. Okay. We get no money from the Aviation Authority. Okay. As a matter of fact, we spend our money to help promote air service. So no, we get no money from them. Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea. I'll make sure I bring that up. I really do. I'm only laughing because I tease them all the time that I think that the most they do is pay their membership to be a member of the Explore Charleston. The Explore Charleston group, we spend a lot of money on air service development. And it makes sense because the airport can't do it because you have to treat all the airlines the same. Sure. We at Explore Charleston do not have to treat all the airlines the same. And those airlines that will give us more service, we can do more advertising. To give you an example, for JetBlue, we really wanted Boston service because we knew Boston was a good market. So we did a cooperative marketing campaign with them for Boston. Well, that was good for JetBlue, and it was certainly good for Charleston because it was a great marketing campaign to encourage people from Boston to come to Charleston. So that's how we use our Explore Charleston revenue to support air service.
Now, let me turn over to 2021. The PGA, the Bridge Run might be coming back. Unfortunately, wine and food is no more for next year. How are you preparing right now? What is your comprehensive plan?
Well, we are really sad about wine and food, but it makes sense because obviously they depend on restaurants, and that's the group that's been, like hotels and tours and attractions, been so greatly impacted. But they do have so many good plans right now to lift up that whole food industry during the time when they're not having the festival. But there's no way for them to do that in the way where the restaurants could do it now. But as it relates to the PGA, we had the PGA Championship. They had it in California without any spectators. So moving to Kiowa for May, everyone's really excited about the opportunity to actually be together. So You're in My Prayer is going to be COVID vaccine, so people can actually enjoy it. But it is going to be a great lift for the community, and it'll be good for golf generally in the community because we have a lot of good golf visitors. So that all will be positive. But back to how we started this interview, it's all going to be on how well COVID gets under control.
The Honorable Helen Hill, thank you so much for your time. And again,
it was such a pleasure. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. And I have to really thank you for your positive energy that you bring to every part of what you do for this community. You are a real gift to Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just, doing God's work as always.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. Well, have
And
a great day, honey.
you too. And I hope to see you around, and I hope to get you back on Quintin's close-ups.
Oh, it would be my pleasure. Anytime. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.